Hi, my name's Whelan and this is my Monday stories, and this week we're back in Los Angeles 1990 at the Pills and Frills album session. We'd been there a week, I'd recorded all the drums and finished by the Saturday night, so we'd gone to celebrate that, any excuse for celebration, had a few drinks and headed back to Pasadena, which is right across Los Angeles, to the studio which is in Hollywood, capital, to the apartments where we were staying. I think they were called Bruntwood apartments or something like that. And they were okay, they were kind of nice apartments. And we just sat around the pool drinking till about 4 in the morning. And then I got a phone call saying that Paul Oakenfold and Steve Osborne wanted to be back in the studio at 9 a.m. to re-record God's Cop, the drums on God's Cop. It had been the last track I'd recorded on the Saturday night, and I'd put a kind of drum groove down that was like boom, gag, boom, gag, gung, gang, 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 gang. And I thought it worked, but it wasn't quite grooving, it wasn't swinging enough. And I thought maybe it just had some percussion, it'll be fine. But they thought the same and said, come back in Sunday morning 9 o'clock and we'll lay the drums down. So I'd only had a couple of hours sleep, so I thought I'll get up at 7, go and have a swim in the pool, cold water, wake myself up and prepare myself to play drums at 9 o'clock. As I leave my apartment, it's desolate, the apartments, and I walk past there's a sunken jacuzzi, and Paul Ryder's in there, goes, Gaz, have you got a light? And he's got this unlit cigarette. And I say, what are you doing in there? You've been in there all night? And he'd been in there since about 1 o'clock in the morning. He said, no, and he said, and I've run out of matches and I've got no lighter. So I said, yeah, no problem. I pulled my cigarettes out and I've got no lighter. And I go, I was sat with Bez at the end of the night. And Bez has got this habit of never having a lighter. When you give him a light, he kind of just puts a lighter in his pocket. And every 2 or 3 days, we'd have a cull and go, Bez, empty your pockets. He'd empty his pockets and we'd all go, that's mine, oh, that's where that went. Oh, I've not seen that for weeks, have I? And it was always the same. So we both, and Paul said, same with me. So I said, no, I've not got one. He said, oh, don't worry, someone will come by in a bit. I said, well, your room's 10 steps away. Just get out and go in your room, and I'm sure you got a light in there. He went, oh, I can't be arsed. I'm not getting out. I'm not getting out now. So you've been in there 6 hours at least? He went, yeah, no, I'm not getting out. It's nice and warm. So I say, okay, I've got to go. I'm going to have a swim and I'm going to the studio. I go to the pool and preparing myself to jump in the cold water. It's empty, there's no one around. And suddenly these 4 people appear, all in these Velcro, all these kind of velour tracksuits, a guy and 3 women, and they sit down. I'm trying not to make eye contact, I don't want to talk to him. And then he goes, hi. And I goes, he says, what are you doing up so early? So I said, I've got to go because of work. He says, oh, you're in construction? I'm not even going to attempt the accent again. In construction? So I said, yeah, kind of. I said, what do you do? And I thought, why did they ask that? Why did I say that? And he says, oh, we've been up all night on a shoot, we've been filming. Now, the apartment block was a big bag of people. There was actors that were kind of just starting out, some that were just making it. They were kind of nice apartments, and there was also a lot of adult movie stars. And I thought these are probably from the world of Frankie Vaughan. They're not from Hollywood movies. And he says, yeah, we've been up all night, we've been filming. I said, oh, what have you been filming? He said, and he says the name, and I don't know, I can't remember what it was now, but it was obviously it was an adult Frankie Vaughan film, you know. And oh, okay. And he said, yeah, we're called the A-Team. I went, all right. And he paused for effect, and he said, do you know why? And I thought about it, and I went, anything to do with backdoor activity? And he went, yeah. And I went, okay, please don't say the word. I get it. So obviously they're in the adult movie. And he says, and he stands up and takes his tracksuit off, and the girls are the same thing, and the other girls have got these kind of silver or gold bikinis on, and he's got nothing on apart from this thin piece of material covering his huge, enormous manhood. And he's probably gone, you know, they weren't even Speedos, I don't even know what it was. It was the thinnest piece of material I've ever seen in my life. He'd probably gone to the costume department and said, give me a pirate's eye patch, and he just put that on. It was like an eye patch, but it's bulging out and had this massive manhood. And I was trying not to look, and he said, my name's Jack. And I went, oh, nice to meet you, Jack. And then he paused again, and he went, Jackhammer. I looked at him and I went, yeah, I get it. And then he says, he introduced the first girl, and she had a great adult name. I can't remember what her name was, but the second one he said was called Summer Loving. And I went, oh, after the song from Greece. And she kind of goes, what? So anyway, so then the third one had a wonderful name. He said, this is Jenny Hendrix, or Ginny Hendrix, can't remember it. Jenny, or I think it was Jenny, something like that, but Jenny Hendrix. And I was just about to say, oh, after the guitarist, and I thought, no point, she's not going to have a clue, is she? So anyway, so he starts talking, so then I'm thinking, my OCD kicks in, I'm thinking, I need to get in that pool before then. They've been shooting all night, God knows what kind of fluid's going to be coming out of their pores and orifices into the pool. So I need to get in first, and before one of them, and I hope that when I get in, no one joins me. So I'm kind of edging my way in, but Jackhammer slides into the pool quickly, starts swimming backstroke. No one does backstroke in a public pool. He's doing backstroke, and he's got this huge man and he's bobbing up at the top of the water like that. It's like a drunken shark. And you couldn't take your eyes off it. And I remember thinking, why is he doing backstroke? And I thought, but if he went front crawl or anything like that, he'd probably be touching the bottom if it was that big. So I used this excuse to get off. See you later. I go past the horse and I said, Frankie Vaughan stars there, some porn stars there. And I says, Jackhammer, and he went, oh yeah, the Pittsburgh Python. And I went, what? He went, that's his nickname, the Pittsburgh Python. And I went, how do you know? He said, oh, I met him a few days ago. So anyway, I get off and Big Les is waiting in the van beeping his horn. It's about 7:30 in the morning. And if you've seen the first videos, Big Les is a 6'9" Mancunian of Polish descent who used to be a driver for the Hong Kong police, lunatic, but always got you there on time somehow and safe. He'd been a friend of the Stone Roses, and I think he drove for them first. But we'd flown him over to drive us from across LA to the studio every day. Don't know why we didn't use someone local, but we got Big Les over. We never saw him. He was very quiet. He stayed in his room with the curtains closed. He only came out when he was driving us back and forth from the studio. So I jumped in the van and PD's in there. I said, what are you doing there? You doing some keyboards? He went, no, I'm going for breakfast. Now where the studio was, behind there was a diner, and we used to go for breakfast every morning. And PD got into the habit of having this huge steak for breakfast. So he earned the nickname Steak Davis for that recording. So he was going there. So we're driving and Les is doing his usual, and he used to drive. It was a Sunday morning, so it wasn't that busy, but there's still quite a bit of traffic about, but not too much. And it's like, you know, them video games in 80s when you're doing the driving games and the cars are just flying past like that. It was like that. It drove like a, anyway, he got us there, and as we were talking, he started talking to me, talking like that. I said, all right, and I said, Les, what's with the West Country accent? And he went, what accent? And he usually had quite a thick Mancunian drawl. And he said, oh, I'm using this accent while I'm here. I said, why? He went, well, you never know with strangers if you don't give too much of yourself away. Oh, you're a bit paranoid, Les. Anyway, he drops us off at the studio. And as we go in, there's Paul Unkenfold's in one of the drum booths, and he's going through records, playing records, listening to records. And Paul Unkenfold, what he brought to the table, he kind of gets the credit for the production. But he was a tastemaker, so he'd play records, usually 70s soul and funk records, and say, this is, for beats, melodies, all sorts. He's really good at it. He really knew his music and had a great record collection. But his partner, Steve Osborne, was a hands-on engineer, producer. He was a guitarist. He knew all the technical side. He did about arrangements, string arrangements. He knew all that. And he didn't really get the credit he deserves, Steve Osborne. Steve was a kind of tall, skinny guy with curly hair and these eyes, that kind of big eyes like that, which earned him the nickname that horse christened him Yikes, because he was all like Yikes in a cartoon character. So we call him Yikes. I'm not sure whether he was offended by that or not, but he accepted it. And he was at the desk, and then behind him, and then there was Ray, the in-house engineer. Then sat at the back of the studio was this couple that had been sat there all week when I was recording drums, both dressed in all black, long jet black hair, dark sunglasses on. Never uttered a word, either of them. Never moved, just sat there. And he had this kind of Native American hat, the big one like the Jamiroquai thing, but without the horns, he had one of them on. And they were just quiet, and they didn't have said anything. So I thought maybe they own the studio, or they were the studio, because no one ever said anything to them. They just left them, they just sat there. So anyway, we go in, and Oakenfold brings his records over. I can't remember what the funk record was, but it was I remember it was from 1973. It was a really rare soul record, and the groove was done similar, but the hi-hat was on the offbeat, so it kind of went ding ding dang ding dang ding ding dang ding, and it transformed the song. The groove just completely changed. They said, let's do that. So I did a couple of recordings of that. They looped it, and they just took a section. They looped it for the old song, so it was consistent, because they didn't want the song to be moving out like a normal song. They wanted it to be like a dance track, so it was just solid all the way through. So they looped that. So we did that, got a couple of takes, were satisfied. And then I go back into the studio, and I say, I'm going to have a smoke to relax. I'm looking around, I didn't have any herb on me, but I knew, like in our rehearsal room, anywhere we was, there'd be ashtrays laden with unfinished spliffs, and there was 3 or 4, and had a couple of smokes. Then I say to Ray, the studio engineer, I need to buy some herb, I need some weed, when I can get some. He said, it's okay, I'm ordering a Chinese in a minute, you can get some. And I went, I'm ordering a Chinese. I said, one, it's 10:30 on Sunday morning, and 2, weed. He said, oh yeah, they do both, they deliver all the time. So he phones up, so he puts the phone on, he says, oh, they've got this, it's called this herb they've got. It's called purple paralyzing something. And I said, what's it like? He said, it's an indica. It's really strong. He said the last band we had in had some. He said it felt like they'd had their heads and arms and legs chopped off. And I went, that sounds suitable. So he said, all right, so it'll be here soon. So anyway, so about half an hour later, the door opens, and this guy comes with this surfer, really camp, but a surfer, long blonde hair, surfing t-shirt on a skateboard. And in one hand he's got bag of Chinese food, and he's got the weed. And he comes in, he introduces himself, this calm voice, goes, hi, food and weed are here. I'm Trevor. Sorry. I'm Kevin 24/7. And Ray looks at me and goes, Kevin 24/7, never fails. So he says, who's the Chinese, who's for the weed? I said, weed. He hands it over and we sit down and we have a smoke. He says, can I have a smoke with you? I said, yeah. He said, it's great stuff. It's this purple paralysing something. He said, my friend gets it from across the border. I said, oh, okay. He said, you ever watch them old Clint Eastwood films? Good, the Bad and Ugly? I said, yeah, of course. He said, you only go into towns and there's like people and they're asleep like that with their hats, just sat on the floor asleep. I said, yeah. He said, they've been smoking this. So I said, oh, it's that good? He said, oh, it's fantastic. So I have a smoke and it's really good, and I pass him some, and then he just sits down on the settee next to the couple dressed in black with his feet on the skateboard still, and he falls asleep. And I'm feeling the same, but I'm feeling hot, so I take my top off and I've got my t-shirt on. That photograph was in New York. I've got Sitting Bull on it. I had that t-shirt on and it's got Sitting Bull on it, and the guy dressed in black with it in the long black hair says, oh, and he says I can't remember the name, I can't remember the name, but it's the Sioux Indian actual name translation for it rather than the anglicised Sitting Bull. I said, do you know that? He said, oh, I know, I've spent some time with Sioux Indians, I know it. And we started talking about Sioux Indians, and he's got this kind of Scouse accent. I said, I know you, don't I? And he kind of lowers his glasses and goes, it's Ian Ashby from the Cult. I said, what you been doing here all week? And he said, well, I live around the corner and we've got a week off, so I thought I'd just hang out here. But he'd been there every day, he never said a word. So we started talking about Indians, having a laugh, etc, etc. And then the afternoon comes, the rest of the band turned up because Sean's doing a vocal on Kinky Afro. Now, we'd written kinky Afro on the tour in the sound checks leading up to we did a tour just before we got to the studio in Los Angeles. And it started off with PD's keyboards. He'd just doing these two chords, like a big string thing. It was like, you know, a big dramatic kind of movie kind of idea PD had because we was going to Hollywood. And we kind of played around it and got this track together, but it had no vocals yet. We hadn't heard the vocals out, because how we usually work was in the past we'd sit in a rehearsal room and we'd jam for hours and hours, and Sean would sit on the floor scribbling with a microphone and sing these words, and I'd fall out about laughing. Usually me and Paul Ryder fall out laughing because it was always in jokes about what was going on with the band, and the lyrics were just hilarious. And it's funny because I remember going to digress a little bit. Nathan's, our manager's girlfriend, saying they come out of us one night. We'd gone for a meal back in England, back in London. And she said I didn't understand the word they were saying, like they have their own language. And as a band, we kind of did. We had our own language where we could get on talk and no one else would know what was going on. And I remember being at my sister-in-law's, Maxine's, who was married to Andy Rourke, the bass player from the Smiths, one day at their house in Burnage. And Ian Brown, Rennie and Manny come round to visit, and we were talking, and they were talking. They had their own language, and it was like a kind of ye-old English thing, I remember. And no one knew what they were going on. They were talking to amongst themselves with this language. So I presumed most bands did the same. Sean comes in and he wants everyone out of the studio while he's doing vocals, because I think he was a bit shy, and so everyone's leaving. Funny enough, he didn't mind me being there. I'm not sure because I was the youngest, or because I used to laugh at his lyrics, but he didn't seem to mind. But everyone said, no, we'll go out for a drink, get something to eat. But they've left the studio, and no one's heard. He's not put a vocal down, no idea what he's going to do. And as I'm leaving I'm the last to leave the studio. As I'm leaving the studio, I just hear him sing, son, I'm 30, I only went with your mother because you did. And I remember half closing the door and thinking, that's going to be really controversial. Oh, it's going to go down on one of the greatest intros to indie band's single in history. I thought, oh, that's just incredible. And I couldn't wait to catch up with us and tell them what I've just heard. We come back and he laid a couple of tracks down, and we worked on a few more stuff. And then Ian Ashby says, come on, I'll take you all to the Viper rooms for a drink and something to eat and a party. So we go, okay, it's not too far away. So Sean's still doing vocals, so he doesn't go. Me, Paul Ryder's still at the apartments, he's not come to the studio. If it's me, PD, Bez, I actually think someone else in the studio came. There's a few of us anyway, 5, 6 of us went. And we got in there, there's lots of different people. You'd seen them, actors, musicians. And we kind of got sat at this table having drinks, and then next to us was these women actresses, and I noticed one of them was Julia Roberts. She'd just done Pretty Woman, probably one of the most famous actors in the world at the moment. She starts talking to us, and then she keeps saying to Bez, do you want to dance? And he's going, no. And she's persistent, jot it down, and he keeps saying, no, and she keeps asking him, no. And we're all laughing our heads off, and he's going, and she introduced herself, and he says, oh, very nice to meet you, Julie, but, you know, and she's asking, and he wouldn't have it, he wasn't interested in dancing, no, you know, we were there to have a drink and then get back to the studio. But he wasn't having it anyway, so we leave, as we're leaving, we said, do you know who that was? He said, no. So he said, who? He said, the girl talking to you. He went, who, Julie? I said, no, it's Julie Roberts. She's an actress. He went, the one that looks like a man. And he said, yeah. And we said, you know, she was obviously coming out. And he was like, he wasn't interested, of course not. You know, and we kind of had a laugh. We got back to the studio and we sat down, and Sean said, we've done Kinky Afro, have a listen to this. And they played it back, and everyone just, you could see everyone was waiting for everyone. As soon as they sing that opening line, everyone kind of just looked up. And the song was actually called Groovy Train. It was called Groovy Afro. But we'd heard, as we recorded it, we was reading some music magazine, and the Farm had released Groovy Train. So we said, we're going to have to change it, we can't call it that. Any other ideas? And there's a guy from the record company who was there, that's who it was, a guy from the record company for Elektra. And Sean said, well, we'll call it Kinky Afro. And he said, no, you can't call it that, you can't use the word kinky in a song. And as soon as the record company said that, everyone went, that's the title. And you could see his face sing like that. Anyway, we finished, we head back to the apartments that night, and we get back, and it's about 1 o'clock in the morning again. And then Paul Ryder's still in the hot tub. I said, oh, she's been in there for nearly 24 hours. He said, I know, I've only had 12 cigs. Not got a light, so everyone just piles in with cigs and lighters. And he says, right, that's it, I'm putting up to the next day. And I literally, the next day I woke up early again, and I wasn't going to go in the pool, obviously. I got up early to go for a walk, and he's still in the jacuzzi. He must have been there. And I'm not exaggerating. He had around him was 2 ashtrays full of cigarette dimps, takeaway empties, and he looked like he'd wrinkled. And I said, oh, she'd been in there for nearly 2 days. He'd been in there for well, certainly a day and a half. And he said, no, I think it's about time to get out, but I can't feel my feet. Anyway, until next week.